Hello again. You should probably know who I am by now. Kevin Groves, a Kemetic and Chaos Magic practitioner, and today, or this one anyway, if there's more than one for me today, I'm going to talk about Kemeticism. Now, like all traditions, I couldn't probably cover the entirety of it in just one recording, but what I'm going to do is just talk about some of the many little sort of, well, actually just think of it an FAQ. That's how we'll go on how Kemeticism is, or how you should approach, or, well, not how you should approach, because I can't really tell you how to do these things. Little explanation for various things that pop up I see quite frequently on forums and questions to myself and so on. Now, I'm going to totally ignore talking about the history of Egypt, because pretty much everybody's, Tutankhamun and Ramesses and all of that kind of stuff you can find anywhere. But from a Kemetic practitioner, that is someone who is a Kemetic reconstructionist, and there's certain degrees of reconstructionism, and perhaps if you're an eclectic as well, you might dip into a little bit of it. But this is more from a Kemetic reconstructionist point of view. Now, what things do you need to look out for? The first one is, do I need to learn hieroglyphics? Well, and of course this is in no particular order, just in case it's not the highest thing on my list about hieroglyphics, but yes, they are important. They are magical words. They are Heka written down. They are really fundamental part of Kemeticism. But the vast majority of ancient Egypt couldn't read or write. So depending on how you want to do your reconstructionism, learning them will be helpful if you need to look up inscriptions and you're out and about looking for stuff, or if you want to draw or make your own things, then fine. It's great. It's hard work. I learned a long time ago, forgot about it, I've had another re-go, learnt some, and I've now forgotten it all again. So, there's only a few you usually tend to stick with, and, obviously, Yank is like probably the most frequently used one, and maybe Eye of Horus as well, which isn't a hieroglyph in its own. It's a selection of different hieroglyphs that make up fractions. So, if you've got the inclination, and there's a lot to learn in Kemeticism, go for it if you want. Now, that sort of leads on to another aspect of Kemeticism, is vocalization. Now, we don't know how they vocalize the language. The closest match we have is Coptic, Egyptian Coptic, which was very late in the Egyptian language evolution. And some of it has remained, some of it's possibly corrupted. It's our best guess at the moment, and that's how most people tend to use it for vocalization, based on that basis. If you want to do it, sometimes I do, some phrases I might do, but on the whole it's not massively important, so don't get stressed over that. And there's one aspect of it you might want to also consider, and this mostly comes from sort of Western views of magical practice. Clarity of what you are communicating is very important. If you don't understand it 100%, how are you certain what you're trying to formulate? I was going to say intent, but people tend to use that as a different kind of context. But if those words you are using are not 100% correct, are you going to get back are you trying to get over what you're trying to... see, I'm falling over these words already. It's my own language. Clarity. let's stay with that. Clarity. If you're not clear on what it is you're communicating, don't do it. So that's my view. Others will vary, and do what you like. I don't care. Okay, well, this sort of, again, leads on to another one. Obviously, I did say this is not in any particular order, but hey, I'm slightly chaotic too, so hey, who knows how this was going to go. Research. This is one of the fundamental parts of Kemeticism. It's both a curse and a blessing. It's a blessing in that out of all the ancient religions, ours is possibly really, well, I wouldn't say really well documented. The Greeks have probably got a better consistency in their content, but seeing ours is like really old, pre-Greek, we've got a good set of resource. Unfortunately, there's a lot of it, it's disjointed, and it's constantly changing as people find new things and new revelations come up, and then all the previous stuff that's never been published eventually gets published and catches up and blows our minds, and we all have to start again. I remember going to a conference, Egyptology conference some years back, and one of the topics was just trying to sort out the chronology of, I think it was, not sure, it might have been a third intermediate period. And there was a lot of aggro in the audience disagreeing with the chronology. And, you know, these are professionals and they don't quite know how it all hangs together. So, you know, for us who are amateurs, and even us that have some experience, it's hard work. And Kemeticism takes a lot of book smart and a lot of research. And again, another aspect side to that is you need to be prepared for change. I mentioned this in a few other videos I've done, but I'll mention it here because, you know, we're here. I always thought that my particular goddess was like, you know, Salket, Scorpion goddess. She's gorgeous. I'm going to be showing all these again in a minute. You know, this old girl, she's lovely. I ran out of resource, so I thought I had exhausted everything. And for a decade or two, I went along that view. And then some new research material appeared in my horizon. And it blew my mind, and now I've got shed loads more information on her and all the other stuff that's associated with her. So that has totally changed my perspective. So be prepared for ground shifting changes to your magical and spiritual path. Some people are more geared for that. Luckily, because I also practice chaos magic where you're generally on your toes all the time and things are always changing, I was able to cope with that quite well and say, fine, good, I've got some new stuff to play with and I don't care about my previous feelings about not knowing where I'm going. So, it's hard. Now, other aspects to Kemeticism, well, this tends to go with all the bling that tends to be with most of these religions. We all like our bit of shiny stuff. Possibly with neo-paganism, it tends to be crystals and shiny things. But with Kemeticism, it's all the jewelry and all the deity statues. We got a lot of it. Now, I've already thrown this one up. You know, you can. That was, I think, from Cairo. Let's think. I've got my Sekhmet was given to me. I've got lots of good old Anubis, good man there, and you know, and this big. I can't even get him in the frame. My Thoth, which I had to struggle back from Witchfest with once, and you know, he's a little bit delicate in places. And he survived, because he was destined to be with me. And of course you've already seen, you know, my Salket that I adore. one of the most beautiful ones I've got is this. It's can I get it in frame so that it is easy to see? Yep, it's 3D printed with gold plate of the Nihebkal snake spirit. I have a particular fondness for, from a friend who printed that at Templegate. And of course I picked up a couple of things in York last year, you know, from coins. But, you know, all this stuff costs money. And, you know, most of this has been over the years. Probably the last I've just shown you, the snake pendant and these other pendant, probably in the past year. The rest goes back, well, Salket was probably the first thing that I've just shown you, and that was, I got that on our honeymoon nearly 20 years ago. So I've had things for a long time, but you know, it's nice to buy stuff. And if it's a deity statue, even more when it's a nice one. But like with all traditions, you don't have to buy shitloads of stuff. You can make, and I love to make stuff. Various things I put out this week have got, you know, my bow harp, and I've got my sistrum that I made. It's quite industrial. I can't carry this in public because people tend to think it's an offensive weapon. And it's a bit industrial-like, but then that sort of matches my sort of chaos magic aspect too, and hardware. And I'm not sure about if I was going to show this or not, but it's something I'm currently in progress of making a Min statue. You know, it's cutting it out of wood at the moment and chiseling it out. So because, well, Min's a really hard statue to get hold of. So only one place in the US at the moment I can find for sourcing it. So I'm going to make one. And there's various other things that I've made, and you know, that is great pleasure if you have those skills. Now, I tend to work mostly with wax, clay and wood. They're always in plentiful supply, and because I use them for other stuff. Okay, wax and clay, poppets. Egyptian Kemetic magic uses a lot of poppets. We like those. So I tend to just do stuff if I find a need for it. So, and you don't need loads. Now, I see on a lot of forums and so on, people laying out altars and stuff with all the stuff on, and that's lovely. Good thing about Kemeticism is, one, you only need really one statue of deity that you want to work with, and two, you don't need to have a group. Kemeticism is generally a solitary practice because it's, if your temple practice, I'm going to come on to all that in a minute. So you can keep it to bare minimum. Mainly, also to some extent, the temples had stuff, obviously, because they were the state religion. But for home practice, you can just get away with any old crap. To be honest, it's actually I say that wrong. You don't need to have a lot. They didn't have a lot. As long as you've got something to focus on, one or two things, job done. So don't worry about buying loads of stuff. And you know, I obviously don't buy all the makeup, and I don't make up the eyes and all the costuming and stuff. I did that once for a fancy dress when I was little. I don't do any of that now. Although I'm waiting for my hair to go, and then I can shave that all off. Then I will look a bit more Egyptian priestess-like. Then I might do that. But I'll only forget and go to the door with it all on, and that will scare the locals. So if you want to do all that, you can do all that. It's not necessary. If it helps get you in the mood. I do have a lot of incense though. I do make my own capet balls. Hang on. Here we go. Capet incense takes me about a week to make. Not just one ball, but a batch. And you know, I burn a lot of incense frankincense, myrrh, Kemetic, and a few other bits and pieces as well. So, and the incense does get you in the mood, along with a little bit of Hathor rattling. So, anything that gets you going, that's helpful. Now, another part of now I'm filming this after a night on Bloody Marys. This is not a full Bloody Mary. This is just tomato juice, okay? I haven't reached that stage where I want to get completely smashed all day. Not yet. Anyway, another bit of Kemeticism, and this was sort of brought up when I went to sort out an event a couple of years back, and I mentioned I'm Kemetic, and the response was, "Oh, isn't that all about death?" Fair point. People, the general public, do think the Egyptians were pretty obsessed with death. Now, there's a reason for that. They loved life way too much. Life was a great, okay, it may have been hard, but it was a great thing. They loved it. They loved the beauty of the world around them. They loved the friendship, the family life, the food, the drink, and they just wanted to keep going and continue the party into the next life. And I can see that. It looks a beautiful place. It is a beautiful place. And yeah, so yes, death is also a huge part of their preparation, and they do have a lot of ancestor, not quite so ancestor worship that probably most traditions go for, but they do remember their ancestors. They have to feed them. One aspect of Kemeticism is remembering. If your name is removed or forgotten, then you cease to exist in the afterlife. So, you know, your descendants pay homage and remember you, the ancestors, so you don't disappear. So, you know, death is important, but life is too. And I mentioned this earlier, without all the amulets, did I mention this all? I forget now. Amulets all over the place, we love those. So there were more amulets for the living than there were for the dead, even though it appears that they shoved loads of amulets in with the bodies, at least with the royalty anyway, not so much with the commoner. So, other aspects. Now, as I said, their life, they loved their life so much, and they were, as you dig into not dig in literally, but metaphorically dig into the research for how they lived their lives, you'll find they were way ahead on many social aspects to what even we are now. Equality was phenomenal. I can keep going on, and we've probably not got enough time for this. So, while there were still flaws in the society, they were to some extent expected to be a male and female and not homosexual in any way. On a practical level, that was possibly for the reproduction and sustainability of the society, but you know, there were homosexuals and all of that quite well documented, to be honest. It all went on. They just didn't do anything about it and didn't penalise anybody for being against the society norms of what was expected. So celebrate what was good about their society. Equality, women equality blew the Greeks away when they occupied. The liberation and legal status, women could own property. Okay, it was still a fairly patriarchal society, but there was still a lot of freedom, more than even now. But anyway, we'll move on, and to the very last thing Well, no, I've still got all the other bits about the temple and home practice. Okay, on this topic bit, we'll just finish off with this last one. And probably the one that I probably get asked, or I see often mostly asked, is which deities do I pick? How do I know I found one? What do I do? Well, I was lucky my goddess found me, and quite a few that got their deities found them. There's a lot of deities in ancient Egypt. Often they have the same names. Well, no, they're the same deity, but with lots of different names. There's obviously a lot of overlap. Some merge, some split. It's chaos, really. It's a mental place to be at sometimes. But just find something that you like and see where it takes you. It's a wild thing. As I said earlier, my Selket I dig back into. That led me on to lots of others. Niheb Cow, I mentioned, happens to be the son of Selket. Gone off into Hathor and Sekhmet and Bast, and now exploring Min. You know, these things take you off in different directions, and there's a lot to explore. Oh, and Bez. I can't forget Bez. I love Bez. Bez is a good dude. He's over there on the shelf still. So, you know, there's a lot to explore. You'll never get bored. You'll get lots more to do, but you will never be bored. So, okay, let's draw a line under that bit and look at actual practice. Now, there's two areas to this, and there's sometimes a merging. We're in a privileged position where, for us, even if you know, not got a lot of cash, we are still privileged enough that we can decide how we're going to practice. We don't have a social status where certain people can only work with temples and certain people can only be within the public life. So the two spheres work differently. What happened was temples were permanently staffed by a few people. Early on it was lay people, general public, but as the civilization grew and changed, it tended to be the elite people that were the central core. But still, even from the very start, the general public would do 3 months as part of their service payment to as tax, because obviously they didn't have coin, they had a barter system. So they could like give up a few months of their year to work on a government project, like, you know, temple building, pyramid building and so on. Or they could go into the temple and serve there for a few months and then come back into the community. And that's their obligation paid. Otherwise, you farm and you give up stuff and barter that way. So, the general public would go into the temple for a few months, do various roles, come back out. Now, this had an effect on both sides. On the one side, the temple was permanently staffed on a constant stream of fresh people serving. Now, I did read at one point on the decline towards the end of the Egyptian society when under Greek occupation. The temple at Karnak had over 80,000 staff servicing that temple complex. 80,000. That's more than a few towns from what they've done. You know, it's immense. So, within temple, you would have varying layers of priesthood, and they would have specific roles. And in the central naos, central shrine of the deity, only the head priest, its priestess, depending on, you know, what's going on, and the statue would happen. Now, for us modern Kemetic reconstructionists, we can choose to do that. As I said earlier, it's a great solitary practice, Kemeticism, because they generally didn't have group ritual. It was 1 or 2 people max with a deity statue in the dark, in the central shrine doing their stuff. So it fits in really well without having to go out into the muddy fields or in the woods somewhere that you lot sometimes have to do. So that would happen. Now they would also have major festivals, and they would take the statues out to the general public where everybody would then see them, and they'd all be eating, drinking, partying and so on, but the general public didn't enter, well, would only be able to enter so far into a temple complex, and then they were forbidden to go further into the actual house of the deity, the house of the gods. So, as I said, modern Kemetic reconstructionists, we have the privilege that we could probably do that at home. But we also have the privilege that we can be as the general public and function in those. Now, when they'd done their stint in the temples, quite often they would have picked up new skills and then bring them back home to use within the community. You know, if they'd like picked up healing capabilities, methods, then they could share that with and work within the local community. If they pick up divination skills because they were working on an oracle of some kind for the deities, they can bring that, and you know, that sort of gives them an income within their community. So it was a very worthwhile practice to do a few months in there, because you know, it's on the job training that you can reuse. So it slides back into the home. We can still do the divination as if we'd learned it in the temples. We can do some of the deity stuff. Now, we're not entirely certain what happened within the home, because the homes were generally then just passed on to somebody else and reused. Like some complexes like Dalla Medina, where is that or was it the other one? Never mind, I get confused. And I need another drink. It's a warm morning, and the light's coming through this window, and I'm baking already. Yes, so we're not entirely certain what they did, because the public were highly mobile in some ways. If they went with the agriculture, they would go and they would move town to town if they had to, or whatever, or house to house if they needed to change in any way. So the public was fluid in its movement, which meant any kind of permanent ritual space they had at home, they would have took with them. Now there are a few research papers that I've picked up that show what remains they have found in situ within residential properties that could give clues, you know, broken statues and so on. And I mentioned Dalla Medina. What was it? Words, I'm not awake enough yet. Yes, there was this one of the artists' sort of compounds where, you know, the elite artists for the royal tombs would function. Bashri? Is it Bashri? Whatever, anyway. Each of the little houses had a elevated place right by the door. Now it's debatable, and they call this the lit cloth as one of the terms for it. Now there's a lot of debate whether that was a altar, or if that was bed or some enclosure for some people in the house or something, for when women's time of the month or whatever. There's a lot of debate. Now, it doesn't help that this particular platform tends to be, you know, about 5-6 foot long, which is like where you could lie down but uncomfortably lie down on. It was always like little steps up to it, so why would you would probably reinforce that view that it is a bed of some kind, because you'd have steps going up onto the platform. But then there were things found on the platform that suggest, well, there were ornaments there. So it's a big altar, or it's a bed, or who knows, don't know. But it was a common feature in all the doorways to all the houses. So I tend to go with the view that it was some kind of altar. You know, you come in and out the house. It helps that you have your deities first and last thing you see when going through the door. You know, they're guarding the portal into your house. They are there. You can give them regards as you go in and out. You know, it's a perfect thing. And a part of the Kemeticism that I try to do is I try to involve as much of it into daily life. I don't just leave it for the big parties. And yeah, I've got like 40 odd different calendar dates for festivals through the year, so I'm generally got something going on. But you have to live. If you're a reconstructionist, you tend to have to live as much as you can. So I tend to involve daily routine, such as saying hello to all the statues first thing in the morning, every time I go through the door. So, you know, my front door's just here that I tend to use because I've got two. So all my deities are within sight of me as I go through the door. And, you know, that helps. I tend to include Egyptian food in what I eat, or at least Arabic and Mediterranean and North African. I tend to enjoy that just to give me some connection. And so it's finding things that work on a daily routine. You just gotta get on with it. I don't know what else I can really say. It's hard work. It's enjoyable work. I love it. I love these guys. And it's part of my life. If you get stuck, come talk to me or come along, kemetictemple.uk. We've got a free forum there. Lots of questions can get answered. Hopefully this rambling has been useful. If not, ask. Bye for now.